Hi, my name is Lisa, and this is Margot, and we're the host and hostess of Live Well Bethel Park. Live Well Bethel Park is a monthly series that brings you tips and tricks to help you live a happier, healthier life. Previously, we shared health tips for your pets, and you can find that episode on the BPTV YouTube page under the Bethel Park Speaker Series. In this episode, we will discuss dog training and helping acclimate a new dog to your home. We are joined by Erin O'Toole of Say It Once Dog Training. Erin has been working with animals for over 15 years, starting with volunteering at a cat rescue in 2007. In 2020, she joined Say It Once Dog Training and has trained over 1,000 dogs and their humans. Erin also serves as a board member for Paws Across Pittsburgh, a local animal rescue that has served over 3,000 dogs. She also serves as the foster coordinator for Say It Once Rescue League, a nonprofit dedicated to saving the lives of rescue dogs by providing free behavior modification training. Since 2017, Erin has personally fostered and trained 142 dogs in her home. She and her husband now have 5 dogs, 2 cats, and a bearded dragon, and live in the South Hills area of Pittsburgh. Welcome, Erin. It's nice to meet you. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you brought with you?
Yeah, so I'm Erin. I'm a dog trainer here with Say It Once Dog Training. We have a couple locations, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Nashville. I brought with me my oldest Siberian Husky, this is Nara, and then I brought my 5.5-month-old puppy Foster named Puppy. So I actually got started in dog training through a rescue here in Pittsburgh. So I was foster with Paws Across Pittsburgh, and I've had 142 foster dogs so far. I was taking the foster dogs that were having difficulty getting adopted. And so when I would get those dogs, I was working on a lot of training, and I was following a whole bunch of trainers here in Pittsburgh and asking questions as much as I possibly could. And I got linked up with Vinny Soma through Say It Once Dog Training. And in 2020, he ended up hiring me on, and then that's where I got started working with them.
Do you find it difficult when you foster a dog to give up that dog once you've worked with them for a period of time?
Yeah, so my track record is actually pretty good. I've only adopted 3 of my foster dogs out of 142.
Okay.
So yes, there are a few that just hit your heart in a certain spot, and you have to keep them. But for the most part, my goal is to get them adopted into people's homes. If I kept every single one of my foster dogs, I would be a hoarder and probably not be able to foster anymore. So I try to keep as few as I possibly can.
What are some of the basic commands that you use or that you start with to train a dog?
So one of the things that I don't do when I get a dog is actually teach a lot of commands. So my very first thing is I put a leash on that dog, and then they wear that leash 24/7 unless they're in their crate. I work a lot on just basic communication skills with them, making sure that they understand eye contact. I'll use a lot of food, just offering them engagement with me and being around me. And then after that, I'll typically teach them a place command, which means go sit on your dog bed for a little bit. And then I'll teach them a crate command, which means go into your crate.
I was going to say, do you do primarily crate training or use the crate as a primary training tool?
I love the crate for a lot of different reasons,
Okay.
but one of the big ones is making sure that they're not practicing bad behaviors. So I have a puppy. A lot of people ask, how do you get that puppy to not chew on things, not jump on this, not go counter surfing, not do a whole bunch of stuff. But I don't want to train them not to do things. I want to prevent them from doing things and then teach them what I want them to do.
So it creates a safe space. The crate creates a safe space for them and for you.
Yep.
Okay. So you said you use a leash in order to, and you put it on them. How do you introduce that to a puppy that's pretty much free and not used to having a collar or a leash on them?
Sure. So if they've never had it on, which when you get an 8-week-old puppy, they've never had a collar before, you just kind of work them through it. So if I put that collar on, I'm offering a ton of food, and I'll practice taking it off, putting it on, taking it off, putting it on. And I'll use their entire meals for those things.
Oh, okay.
So they're all going to be hungry. They're all going to want to work for that food. So I'll just use that to start getting them comfortable having things put on them.
So I know I've heard in the past, I've had dogs in the past, I've heard that, dogs tend to not piddle where they live.
Sure.
How do you start housebreaking a dog as far as, do you use puppy pads? Do you introduce them to go outside? We live in Pittsburgh. It's cold here.
Yep.
It's sometimes difficult
I
depending
always
on
say,
when you get a puppy.
because we live in Pittsburgh, they're going to have to go outside in bad weather.
Yes.
So whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, whether it's cold outside, I'm still going out with that dog
Okay.
and then working them through that potty training.
Okay.
I don't prefer potty pads. I like to just keep them on a very, very consistent schedule and then
Okay.
use the crate when I can't watch them and then have them on a leash or nearby if I think that they still have to go. Because you'll notice that they'll start to pull away from you, and at that moment I'll say, hey, they probably have to go to the bathroom. I'll run them outside real quick.
Okay. Okay. Do you do any type of, I've seen videos, do you do any type of, some people do like a bell and they hit a bell at the door or something like
can.
that. Do you recommend it?
After being in a couple thousand dogs, going and training them, I noticed that it just becomes a demanding tool. So they'll
Okay.
go and hit the bells to go outside. They'll go and hit the bells because they're hungry. They'll go and hit the bells because they want affection.
Okay.
Right. So you can train it well. Nara, my oldest here, has been trained on the bells.
Okay.
But it does take a lot of consistency to make sure they understand bells equal potty.
So I have an older dog. She is 13 going on 14 years old. How do you train or how do you deal with an older dog that no longer warns you or tells you that they want to go out? Is there anything that you can do?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So one of the biggest ones is you said that you got her when she was a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
So for being in a new house, it's a different set of routines, a different set of a different schedule that she's on. I would just keep a tighter schedule and then keep an eye on her a little bit more often. They are giving signs that they have to go to the bathroom, but they may be extremely subtle.
If I can interject, my issue was she came from a home that there was someone with her pretty much 24/7.
Sure.
I work, so I do not take her to work normally. Today I do, but I normally don't take her to work. So she is by herself
Sure.
for a fair portion of the day.
Sure, and that's just, you're going to struggle a little bit with that.
Yes.
And I usually say if cleaning up accidents has become a real kind of contention point, they do make doggy diapers, which I'm always willing to start with, just so
Okay.
that I'm not cleaning up messes all the time, and it eases a lot of frustrations on both parts, and then just work through a lot of those things. Smaller spaces will also help a lot with potty
I was
training.
just going to ask you, do you recommend confining them to maybe a kitchen area?
Yep, or if you have a
just to
sunroom.
familiarize them.
And if they're okay in a crate, I would 100% use the crate, even though they are older.
Okay. So one of the things that happens a lot, and probably you're familiar with a puppy, is when new people are introduced to them, they want to jump up on them.
Yep.
How do you go about eliminating that so that they don't jump up on
Couple of
individuals?
things. One thing here with Puppy is he's not jumped on anybody, but what we worked on was sitting gets you everything.
Okay.
So teaching them that keeping their butt on the ground will get them all the rewards in the planet.
Okay.
That helps a lot so that they understand what the expectation is,
Mm-hmm.
and then leaving the leash on so that I can manage that. If they look like they're about to jump, I'll just
Mm-hmm.
use the leash to kind of manage that a little bit, so that they start learning that jumping isn't going to get them what they want. And it takes time. I mean, he's 5.5 months. I've had him for 3.5 months, and every single time that he's met somebody, I have to be holding that leash. I have to work him through those things, because the more he practices jumping on people and getting rewarded from those people, the more he'll continue doing it.
Do you recommend, I just thought of this as we were talking, we talked about collars. Do you recommend a harness, or do you have no preference one or the other, or is there a better time to use a harness versus a collar?
I prefer collars over everything else. I
Okay.
teach a lot of dogs how to turn off leash pressure, because pressure in general is a great communication tool for dogs. The harness is okay for smaller dogs, for older dogs, if they're familiar with the harness, but most dogs just learn to pull on a harness.
Okay.
Having 6 Siberian Huskies, if I put harnesses on them, they would pull me down the street, right? So teaching them how to slow down, how to walk with me, that was one of the most important things for me, and so that I did that through collars.
Again, we live in Pittsburgh, colder weather. If a dog has a lot of energy, is there anything that you can recommend doing with a dog indoors, or a way to kind of let them get out that energy if you're unable to get out, or if we have rainy weather or something along those lines?
Anything that's going to engage with them, so playing tug of war, playing fetch, playing games in general is going to be a great way to use up energy, and then using their food. We tend to put food in a bowl, put it down on the ground, give it to them, and then they look to us to entertain them, right? So I'll take that food and make games through entertainment. I'll use lots of games where I can have them searching for food, looking around the house for food, working for that food, and that'll use up a lot more energy than running around in a backyard for 3 hours.
I've seen, recently I've seen on Amazon, they have those little toys, I'm going to say, where they sniff them and turn things and can open slots and get treats out of, or balls that they roll the ball and little treats come out. Is that something you would recommend or use, or is it
I feel like people spend a lot of money on those, and you can make something at home that's going to be much more engaging for the dog. Once they figure those out, it's no longer as mentally stimulating for the dog. So you'd have to continue buying more new ones and things like that.
I do know that I do give her a treat, and I hide it in different spots during the day. So when I go home after work, I go to see if where I hid it, it's still there, and I know that she's actually found it. And
it's a great game, like searching for food, using their nose.
And she's smart enough to know that it's somewhere, so she knows where to look. So if a dog has anxiety, and I don't necessarily mean, well, there are different types of anxiety. There is separation anxiety, there is thunderstorms, loud noises, fireworks. How would you suggest dealing with that? And if it becomes a destructive behavior or happens while you're gone, is there a way that you can deal with that?
Yeah, so anxiety, again, like you said, it is a little bit more of a complicated situation of things. I tend to work dogs through a lot of those. Most of the time, dogs are, if they're scared of thunderstorms or fireworks, they just have had little exposure to thunderstorms or fireworks, and nobody's kind of shown them what to do during that moment in time, right? So you want to kind of have them exposed to those things and be able to work them through it, but you have to be home to do that. Separation anxiety is mostly caused by being next to the dog constantly. So same thing, to work through separation anxiety, you have to do that while you're home, but you can't do that letting the dog be next to you while you're home, right? So you have to work through little incremental, keeping them away from you, working through little durations of having them away from you.
Going to the bathroom by yourself and shutting the door.
Exactly. The problem, though, is if you just shut the door, they're going to sit on the other side still having anxiety. So,
so one of the things is, I know Margot, she's a little dog, and she has, I believe, fear. I've only had her a little over a year, but I believe she has fear of bigger dogs. And she has that, as they say, little dog attitude. How do you introduce other dogs to someone like her, or even someone like Puppy who just wants to play all the time? How do you introduce dogs to them?
So introducing new dogs into any environment, I say you want to do it so that they become neutral with each other. So I'll typically go for a long walk with the dogs. I'll go into the room and just sit down and have them kind of, live in the same room together, but not necessarily interacting. Now, I can't have every single dog understand and want to play with other dogs. So she could, comfortably exist near bigger dogs, but maybe never want to play with them. And I won't ever force that interaction on a dog if they're telling me that's not what they want.
I was going to say, she actually has had exposure to bigger dogs. My son has bigger dogs, and she exists with them, but when the excitement happens, when someone comes to the door that they're excited, she tends to get trampled, which is when she gets very frustrated, I think, because they're not aware of her, and I think that scares her, or there's
So you would manage
there.
Her space, right? So either hold her or keep her away from that door, so that you're advocating for that space, because she's not going to understand that, and that frustration isn't fair for her.
So what do you have any suggestions as far as older pets are concerned? Obviously, I always say I acquired Margot, because that's what happened. I didn't know her tendencies when I acquired her. I didn't know what she knew or didn't know as far as commands are concerned. I just learned within the last month and a half, she actually knows how to give her paw. I was playing with her one day, and she was sitting, and I said, "Give me your paw," and she lifted up, paw's that big, but she lifted up and gave it to me, and I was shocked, and she can do that. But we've kind of worked through it, but do you have any suggestions on how you can maybe deal with an older dog, or if you want to rescue an older dog, how to maybe manage that situation when you really don't know their history.
Sure, and working in rescue, I tell everybody I don't know the dog's history, but that makes it no different when they come into my house. So a lot of the times we start looking at the dog's behaviors, and then we say, oh, this must be why they do this. This must be why they do this. Oh, this must have happened to them in the past. But I don't care what happened to them in the past because they're in my house. Dogs will pick up on new routines and new schedules very quickly, within 3 days to 3 weeks. So I get them onto my routines. I get them onto my schedules, and I say, hey, you're in my house now. These are the things that we're going to be doing.
I was going to say, and I'm sure being consistent with them is probably very important.
Yep. So I say consistency, routines, and schedules.
Yes.
Like as long as you can start working through those things and making sure that they're fitting into your lifestyle very well, then that's always going to be beneficial. Older dogs are going to be good too because they're not going to be as energetic. A lot of the times they're a little bit slower, but they can still learn. They can still learn, commands that you want to teach them. They can still learn how to go in a crate. They can still learn to go to the bathroom outside.
Right.
It may take a little bit longer because they have habits that have formed over those years, but new habits can form pretty quickly. So.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have.
Perfect.
If you have any other comments that you'd like to share, we'd be more than welcome to have those.
My biggest piece of advice for any new dog owner, or even if you're struggling behaviorally with any dog at all, is put a leash on. That leash inside the house should be on so that you can give that dog information very quickly.
Okay, Erin, in this segment, we're going to show techniques that you use to train Puppy. One of the comments that we were thinking of is if you have the leash on in the house, what do you do so that it doesn't get snagged or caught on anything in the house?
Yeah, so what I do is I actually buy puppy leashes on Amazon, and then I cut the handle off, and to avoid fraying, which is happening right now, I just end up burning that edge. The handle is what gets caught on the bottom of chairs and the bottom of table legs and things like that. So once you remove that handle, this gets to just drag around with them and doesn't get caught on a lot of things. So this is what I'll usually use in the house. You don't have to be holding the leash inside the house. That's not the point of what I call a drag line or a house leash. But the whole purpose is if they are getting up on your counter, you're not yelling and screaming and making a big scene. You're just going over, you're grabbing the leash and you're removing them from your counter. Same thing for if they're jumping on a person, right? I don't want to scream and yell their name and make a big scene about it. I just go over, I calmly grab the leash, and I just move them off the person, right? So the leash makes it so that I can give that bit of information for a lot of those things where I don't want my dog. But it also means that I can very quickly get into the training portion of it. So if I want to move them to the crate, instead of asking them and then chasing them around the house, picking them up and throwing them in the crate, I just pick up the leash and then I'll guide them into the crate. Same thing for if I want them onto a dog bed, right? So the two things that we were going to train, or at least show a little bit about, is crate training and then place training. So the reason I use both of these is, number one, the crate is going to be a great way to help with potty training. It's going to be a great way to help just minimize the amount of bad behaviors that my puppy can practice. And one of the first things I do is grab either some of their food or some tasty treats, and then I'll ask them if they would go in the crate. So, crate. And then if they're not moving into the crate, I'll kind of guide them in. And I brought the smallest crate for the biggest dog. I'll offer them that food, and then I'll add three things. The first one I'll add is a little bit of distance, so I'll take a step back, and as long as they're staying there, I'll go back and offer them a treat. And then I'll add a little bit of duration, so maybe wait 3-5 seconds, and when they stay there, I go back and offer them that piece of food again. And then the last thing is distractions, having people moving around, other dogs moving around, things that are happening, even dropping food on the ground, and teaching them that I know they saw that food, but if they stay there, I'll pay them instead. So that's the big thing about crate training. Also, closing the door is another one. A lot of dogs will get nervous when you close the door, so we close the door, and they stay there, so we come back and pay.
So I see that you commented that you're using either treats or food. You don't have to segregate, like food is food and when they eat, or treats are something special. You can
So when I
intermix
say
them?
use their food for training, what I actually do is instead of putting their food, so that 1 cup of food into that bowl, I'll actually take that 1 cup of food and put it in my pocket.
Okay.
So I don't like to overfeed dogs. I think we have a problem with overweight dogs in America, but I'll take that cup of food and then use that for training. Okay. So I don't add a lot of extra things in. And if you're going to train a dog, if you're going through whole bags of treats every week, right, your dog is number one going to be a little bit unhealthier just because they're getting overweight on, not good food. And number two, you're giving away all the free stuff, right? So I use their food for that.
Okay.
Training older dogs. So you said you have that 13-year-old dog. They may not want their food. They've been eating the same thing for 13 years. I'm okay with that. If I have to grab a couple of treats because my dog's not taking any food, totally okay.
Okay.
Good boy. The next thing about crate training is when I come over and open the door, I don't want them rushing out, so I'll take my time, go a little slower with that, and I'll wait for that eye contact. So we were talking about eye contact, and sitting or laying down gets them everything. And I'll pick up the leash, I'll say, free, yes, good boy, and I'll guide them out of the crate. The exact same thing is going to be done with the place command. So we're going to say, puppy, place. We're going to guide him over onto this dog bed. Good boy. We're going to give him a treat, and then the same thing. We'll take a step back. We'll pay if he's staying there. We'll add a little bit of that duration, so a couple of seconds of time, and then maybe we'll add a distraction too. So if he gets up, we'll say no, and that's why the leash is there, so that we can guide them back onto that bed, into that sit, and then we'll try that again. This time he's able to stay there. Good boy. And for him to not go get that treat that's right in front of him, I'm actually going to pay him more for that. And then when we're done, free, good boy. And he gets to eat my treats.
So a thought I had about the crate training, a lot of people put their dogs in crates overnight while they're sleeping.
Absolutely.
Do you leave the leash on in the crate overnight also?
Oh, that's actually a great question. If I'm putting the leash on, crate, and even playing this game, if I'm going to close that door and walk away for whatever reason, I will actually take that leash off, close that door, and then walk away. I never leave that leash on when I'm actually going to not be attending this crate.
Okay.
If I'm playing the game, I'll close the door. The leash can stay on because I'm keeping eyes on the dog. But if I'm, again, walking away or even leaving my house or overnight and I'm going to be sleeping, that leash comes off.
So in the morning when you come to obviously take them out of the crate, that's the first thing you would do?
I'll come over, open the door, I'll put the leash on while they're still inside the crate, and free, then let them out.
So Erin, that was amazing.
Thank you.
How old again? Remind everybody how old again Puppy is?
Yeah, so he's 5.5 months old.
He did extremely well.
Thank you.
So obviously it's consistency that you need. Can you elaborate any more on that?
Absolutely. So I'll usually say one of the biggest things I train when I first get a dog is crate training. Like that's my number one tool. And place training, so we saw that he actually got off the bed. We don't do a lot of place training just yet with him. I keep my expectations very low for a 5.5-month-old dog. But what I do is I reward every behavior that I want to see later on in life. So again, he's sitting right in front of me. He gives me eye contact. Yes, I will absolutely pay that every single time. So he starts offering that behavior more and more frequently. Same thing with the crate. A lot of the times when I'm just hanging out in the room, if he's hungry, he goes, what behaviors have gotten me rewarded before? He'll start choosing a lot of those behaviors, and I will get up and go and reward him for those things. So the more I see behaviors I like laying down, sitting down, giving me eye contact, laying on your bed, going to your crate, I will reward. Even though I'm not training it in that moment, I'm rewarding that as a particular behavior, and he offers that
as a good
to me.
behavior.
Absolutely. And then I'll use that leash to manage the rest of the behaviors I don't want to see.
Is there a difference? You have place training. Is
Yeah.
there a difference? People use dog pillows. Is
Sure.
there really a difference, or is it just a preference?
time.
Okay.
So if I'm using a dog bed, my dog might get on it, he might slide it, he might cheat a little bit with a paw being off of it, but on an elevated surface, it's black and white. It makes it so much easier for the dog to understand when he's on it or when he's off of it, and that helps a lot with them learning, right? You can teach it on anything. You can teach it on a kitchen mat, right? But at the end of the day, is it easiest for my dog to be on a kitchen mat or on an elevated dog bed? And it's going to be the elevated dog bed.
Okay. So, as I stated before, this is Margot, She is 13. She'll be 14 years old in October. I acquired her a little over a year ago. I don't know how long she'll stay up here, but I often think, you know, I've seen like dachshunds, especially mini dachshunds. They're so cute and bubbly, and they like to cuddle and kiss, and she absolutely does not.
Yeah.
She is very, the only time she really likes to cuddle, and I'm going to say, is when there's a thunderstorm that has lightning. She
Okay.
does not like the lightning. But other than that, I have to wonder what her history was
Sure.
prior
sure.
to me acquiring her.
And I usually get that a lot, especially with rescue dogs. We want to make, you know, almost sob stories of their backgrounds. And many times it's just the dog's individual personality. A dog that is scared of, you know, tall men in hats doesn't mean that they were abused by a tall man in a hat. Many times it's the lack of exposure to said thing.
Okay.
So she could have just never been picked up when she was younger,
Right.
or maybe she just didn't enjoy being picked
Right.
up, or she was picked up too much, and that's just not what she enjoys.
Yeah.
So when I think about their background and, you know, trying to imagine a sob story about it, it's actually better to not think that they had a sob story, right? If I treated them like they had a sob story, I'm much more likely to allow more behaviors that are not necessarily good behaviors.
Yeah.
Just because I think something bad happened to them,
Yeah.
right? So I take every dog in and I say, awesome, it doesn't matter what happened to you, but nothing bad is going to happen to you in the future, so let's move past that. If they're scared of tall men in hats, right, I'm going to help them understand that tall men in hats are never going to hurt them,
Yeah.
right? If they don't like picked up, maybe I'll actually work through that. Many times that's a selfish thing, so I might not want to, especially if they're telling me they don't want to do that. But you can kind of counter condition a lot of those things to say, hey,
you're okay.
being picked up is, you know, maybe I'll do it next to me rather than on top of me. Do you understand?
Excuse me, yeah.
No, you're good, you're good.
So,
And then use, you know, motivators. So whatever her motivator is, if it's toys, if it's food, if it's affection.
nothing. She really is not motivated by, I mean, when she wants to play, she plays,
Sure.
and she does periodically, but food is not really a motivator to her.
Sure.
She's just, she does
just
her
herself,
thing, and
yeah.
she's just herself.
Yeah. So then we just say, cool, that's my dog, and
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that I'm keeping them as happy as I possibly
Right.
can by not forcing the things that maybe they don't enjoy.
I was going to say, sometimes when you go to a shelter, a dog appears to be aggressive.
Sure.
And maybe they're not aggressive, maybe they're just fearful
Yep.
or just uncomfortable.
Yep.
So you have to consider that, I would think, when you're looking
Absolutely.
for a dog.
Yeah, and you have to think of it from the dog's point of view,
Yeah.
right? They're sitting in a 5x5 kennel for 24 hours a day, and the only time that they see a human is when it walks down that hallway. So to them, that's frustrating. They are going to, you know, kind of have all the energy and start barking and start jumping and start being, you know, what people would say a nuisance, right? And they look at that and they go, oh, I don't want that in my house.
right.
But that was the first time the dog saw a person in, you know, 9.5 hours. We, you know, as our rescue, so Paws Across Pittsburgh, we're foster-based. And foster-based means that we actually pull the dogs out of the shelter, put them into homes, so that we know exactly what their needs are, what they're going to be good with, what they're not going to be good with, so that we can kind of find a much better and well-suited home for them, rather than just walking into a shelter and saying, okay, I like that one because of its looks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So thank you, Erin. It's been very interesting and pleasurable, and I've learned a lot. Where can people go to, what resources can they use to go and find out about you or about where they can adopt, or websites?
Sure. So my dog training company is Say It Once Dog Training, and our website is sayitonce.dogtraining.com. And then if they want to get a rescue dog, our rescue is Paws Across Pittsburgh, which is also pawsacrosspittsburgh.com. But there are lots of local rescues that have animals that are available for adoption, and there's lots of local trainers, right? So every trainer, you know, preferably whatever you want. There's you know, group class trainings, there's in-home trainings, there's board and train, so they'll send their dog away for a couple of weeks. It's dependent on whatever that person wants to do with their dog and how they want to work through training with their dog. Our company does all in-home training, so we come directly to your house, we train your dog with you so that we build that relationship up, and then we do offer a lot of group classes so that they can continue working with the dog, especially out in public areas. And then online, there's a ton of free resources. YouTube has a ton of videos that people can watch and start working on training with their dog. Instagram is a really big one, so a lot of people will find dog trainers through Instagram, and they'll also learn a lot of information so they can get started working with their dog immediately. But when you're dealing with, anything that's a severe behavioral issue, you want to work with a one-on-one trainer personally.
Okay,
So,
great. Thank
yeah,
you. We
absolutely.
appreciate your time.
My pleasure.